Okay, now that I finally figured out how to reassemble this, I reassembled it and shot a video on how to do it, and I did it wrong because I left out a piece of board that actually does need to be mounted before you put the cover on and the slide and everything else. So I'm going to shoot this video over, do it the right way so I can show you how to do it. All right, so you've got a number of different parts that are going to be involved in this first portion of the reassembly. You've got this stop or this disengage, it's almost like a little clutch that's going to engage and disengage the pedal from auto mode to manual mode. You have the lever that moves this axle, clutch, whatever we want to call it. That's that pedal that lives on the side. That's the auto or foot switch mode. Those are 2 Allen set screws that hold that in place. Those are 2mm. This is the tension screw that puts the whole thing under tension, that mounts in the back through this bolt, this little carrier bolt here. This screw obviously is hollow and it has a spring in it. The spring is compressed on one side and open or uncompressed on the other. So you want to make sure that when you put this back together, this side, the compressed side, goes into the screw. We have this little board, which is very important because it has this mechanical lever on it that basically turns the system from one mode to another based on this switch. So this is actually actuated by this little clutch or assembly or whatever as well. So that when you have it in auto mode, the switch is basically allowing the optical sensor to turn the system on and off. When you have it in foot switch mode, which means that you're engaging it with the foot switch, turning it on and off that way, this switch is not engaged because it's not telling the optical sensor to turn on and off. So very important that this switch be in there because this switch is impacted by the motion of this particular tool. But more importantly, when you put this on, it actually blocks the area that the switch mounts into, which we'll get into in just a second. The slide here is what creates the disconnect for the pedal itself. So when this is in one position, this slide is under tension from the screw, and it will give you a heel position that it returns to whenever you're using the pedal. So when it's on auto mode, that's the position it's going to be in. When it's in manual mode, it's going to be floppy like this, and I'll show you that in the next video. But basically, this has to be in a certain position, this has to be in a certain position, that has to be mounted. There's lots of stuff that you have to do in a very particular order, so that's what I'm going to talk about. There are 4 screws that hold this in. One of those has a little wire tie on it. These 4 screws that hold this particular slide assembly into the chassis are a different length from these screws. But you were good doobies and you used your parts bags like I told you to, so that doesn't confront you. You're good, you know which screws go with this little board, so you're all set to reassemble that. This board has a little mounting plate with a little cutout in it. This board mounts just like this. All right, that's the way you screw it back in. Then you have your little lever that sticks out that's going to be impacted by the motion of what's going on over here. I'm going to leave that out of this particular, you know what, actually let's leave it in. This is a means by which you create tension with that screw that's in the middle of the pedal on the top of the board. And that's going to pinch down, that's going to impact how much drag or how much resistance you have on the pedal when it's in manual mode. Here's how you do it. Okay, you're going to take this axle. This is directional, the way that this works, meaning that the handle is directional on here. So there's only a certain way that the handle can be configured, which means there's only a certain way that this axle can be configured. So assuming we've got this screwed in, I'm not going to actually screw in any of this stuff right now. What I am going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way real quick so you can see the orientation of this piece before I put that PCB board back in. So this is the way you want the piece oriented. A little flattish side down. Flattish, I'm talking about this part of it down here, not the actual mount for the handle. You You want to make sure that that little washer is on there, the whole thing's nice and lubricated. That white part is in sort of the down position, and then you're going to insert it into the hole so that it feeds out to where the handle is going to mount. You're going to put it down so that it sits in this little area, and you want to make sure you know where this washer is. You want to make sure you look at that. That washer is actually in the wrong position. It's going to just fall off, and it's not doing anything. So you want to make sure that the washer is on this side of that little carrier. And I'm just going to lift it up, and you know what, I'm using one hand here, so I'm going to just put the phone down for a quick second. Bam. I'm going to reconfigure that washer, and then I'll show you how it's supposed to be. All right. Through the magic of film and lack of pausing, I reconfigured it. So that's in the right position now. It's on the left-hand side of those two little guide pins. Now it's just resting so that the big round portion of it is in the back, which is sort of fine for just this second. We're going to take that board and put that board back in. You're going to screw that board in with the 2 screws for that board before you do the final configuration. But what we're going to do is we're going to reassemble it in auto mode. So auto mode means that this handle is going to be a very certain way, which means that it's going to orient this lever a very certain way. It's going to orient this lever this way. So we'll put our handle on, we're going to screw that in so that this is activating that lever on the board. Remember, that's the board. See how it moves? That's because it's pushing up against it and it's not engaged right now. So this is basically how you want the reinstallation of those pieces configured before you put the slide on. You're doing that so that everything lines up right. You're going to take the slide. The slide is obviously, this housing is directional. You got tabs here, you got screw holes here. So you're going to take it. This is the back, and you can tell also because it has a cutout for that bolt. You're going to make sure that this slide is pushed all the way back. It goes back and forth. It's a slide. It slides. So you're going to make sure that it's all the way back. You're going to place that in its position. Okay. And with any luck, you'll actually have it sit down. All right. So at this point, you're going to screw this in. You've got the switch in the auto position. You have this board mounted. You have the handle or the switch screwed down with those 2 Allen set screws. You're going to have this mounted, and then last thing you want to do is put the whole thing under tension. So you're going to add this screw in, you're going to put it under tension, and it's going to work exactly how it's supposed to work, which we will see in the next video.